Alright, here we go. I'm going to talk through some different things with the ANTSDR here that you see pictured. I actually have one here sitting in front of me, complete in the case, ANTSDR E310 from Microphase. Nice enough to send all the accessories here. I'm pretty impressed. But what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a firmware I put together for it. It's based on the firmware that the ANTSDR GitHub page offers, and then I've modified it to include what I've kind of been most interested in is the headless SigDigger, and put some other applications on there. So I'll show how to get things kind of set up and running with DragonOS and integrated between the two. It seems to work pretty nice. So this firmware I've put a link in the description, and so you'll grab it from Google Drive and download it. There's a README I've put in there, very simple. Just at least from my experience here, I've got works great on a 16 gigabyte card. For whatever reason, I've tried to put a 32 gigabyte, wouldn't boot, but other images like OpenWiFi and some other options where it's essentially a complete operating system running from the SD card has no problems on the 32 gigabyte card. So like I said, I've had good luck with 16 gigabyte card formatted to FAT32, and then what we'll do is we'll copy everything in the folder to the card. So while I'm talking, I'll go ahead and put the SD card in here. You'll see it'll end up looking something like this when we're done with it. What we'll do is you can do it from command line, or if you want graphical interface, KDE Partition Manager works fine. And so that 14 gigabyte, 16 gigabyte stick here, can unmount it, delete it, new, I just go FAT32. At least this is what has worked for me, and apply. Let that run its operation. And while that's okay, it's finished. Alright, if I unzip this file, we've got SD image folder here, and so let's copy. You might have to eject and put it back in. Let's see. Okay, we'll open it up. We'll paste those files there, which is under 20 megabytes. The firmware is anyways. Yep. And so we'll take that SD card out. Goes upside down in the bottom of the ANTSDR, and now my ANTSDR is configured to boot from the SD card. It came like that from the factory, but if you open up the case, or if you have the board, essentially there's some headers on there. You can see right here, you move those around if you don't want to boot from the SD card and you want to boot from something on board, or if you want to put it in a DFU mode, you can do that there. In the background here, I have screen running. If I do a Control A D, I'll detach, and so I have a screen already up and going. You can see essentially on DragonOS, I just do a screen dev TTY USB 0 and that speed there, the baud rate or whatever it is, and connect to the ANTSDR, so we can see it boot as long as everything is okay with the SD card. And we'll see it boot up here. And so I made a modification to the firmware. So by default, it's on a static IP of 192.168.1.10. I have it set to DHCP. I haven't quite figured out how to have it bounce back and forth. But so I have the ANTSDR plugged into a router. I also can plug my laptop in to the, if I were to remove the console cable and put it over to the OTG, it kind of operates like a DHCP server Ethernet over USB, and if I were to plug into there, I would get an IP address kind of like the PlutoSDR 192. Well, I could reach the ANTSDR 192.168.1.2 if you needed to get into it that way, if you didn't have DHCP plugged in or the console cable, and then you can make changes from there. So we'll log in. Default is root and analog, and you can see I've made some modifications to the banner there. And let's take a look around. So once we're in there, pretty neat, the Retrogram-PlutoSDR. I built everything into there. It seems to run just fine. If I had an extra mouse, you may even be able to plug the mouse in on the OTG cable, because it looks like Retrogram. I never used it with a mouse, but I think it works with that. And you'll see we can get, now this is over console, so it's going to look a little funny. We can do, now I know mine is at 118, and I always get comments about changing this to persistent, so you don't get this every time it reboots. You can do that. I just haven't taken the time to do that, but I know that I'm getting DHCP on the ANT at 0.118. So now I'm in there. Now if I do retrogram here, you can see obviously it looks better. Alright, so anyways, there's retrogram running and seems to run just fine. Let's take a look. There's put some comments here. We've got RTL 433. So if you wanted to run that, RTL 433, and we need a dash D for device. Let's see. And so I don't have anything around me that's picked up by 433, RTL 433, so it typically just stops right here, but I have seen it work. I have had it somewhere else, so I know that works. We got DUM 1090. You can run that. That's set up for the Pluto. You can run a web, enable networking. It's got OpenVPN, Tune, GPSD, although I've not seen that work for some reason with this PL2303, I think it is the drivers I put on there. It's that typical USB GPS you'd get off of Amazon. Not had that working yet. I don't know if it's because it also comes up as USB, TTY USB 0. But take a look at that. And OpenVPN, I don't have it starting on boot right now, so you can mess with that all you like. But what I'm most interested in is the SUS CLI devserv. Let's see. So I've shown this before. This is running the headless server now on the ANTSDR itself. And then if we come over and we pull up SigDigger on DragonOS, and it might take a second to start it up because I had SigDigger kind of manually configured to look for the PlutoSDR over the network. Okay. And what we'll do is we'll reconfigure this device to remote. And so if we put in 192.168.0.118, 28001 is the 3 meg sample rate. It's saying that because I had the PlutoSDR configured for something else. It should be capped out at 3. So in this case, we're remotely connecting to the Pluto. And we can stop. change the port all the way to 28003, which is the smallest sample rate setting I have set. 250. And it can demodulate audio at this rate. Let's see. Okay, so anyways, that is running that remotely. Let me stop this for a second. If instead we want to not have SigDigger headless running on here, and we wanted to just use the Pluto over the network, let's see. Give this a second here. I got to change some settings. So what I've found is, let's see. I'm on DragonOS itself here, and if I do this hidden file sources, I messed with this earlier, and let's see. Alright, well, it got changed because I just overwrote it, but here's what we'll do. I'm going to disconnect the console cable for a second, and I'm going to plug into the OTG cable, or the OTG port, and you'll see I'll get another network connection here. And let's see, if I start SigDigger up now, it will see the Pluto, but this is over the USB. Let's save this. And so that's over USB, but what I want to do is, and there's probably an easier way to do this. I'm going to edit this manually for right now. So I come down, I see the Pluto SDR is here, and we're going to make a change here. I'm going to change this to IP, and we'll do 192.168.0.118. I don't know if this is needed, but it's what I put into GQRX. We'll do one more line. And I need to just check that real quick. Let's see. Let's see. SOAPy. Try SOAPy equals 0. Actually, no. We'll change this. We'll change this. SOAPy value 0. Save that. Start SigDigger back up. Actually, let me close it out just a second. Plug back into the console so we know we're not using USB. this a second here. So now we're going over the gigabyte connection. Turn that off for a second. Let's take this up to 10. Yep. Nope. Leave it at 10 meg. We can see we're getting that processing rate, which compared to trying to do it over the USB connection, I think it might have got up to 6 maybe. So there's no audio demodulation happening right now. And that might bring it down a little bit. So, alright, so that's SigDigger. Let's take a look at SDRAngel, because that required a change there. And I'm not sure about the multi-in, multi-out plugin that SDRAngel has, how to set that up yet. But under Preferences, Devices, User Arguments, I added a, I think it was up under here, the hardware argument. Trying to remember. Essentially, I added a hardware argument here and a string, just like you see here, URI equals IP and the IP. That way, when I come over here, I can see this, I think, is capped out at 22. And so now, and I was using this to demodulate a analog 5 gigahertz camera, but that's how I got it up and running, the ANTSDR with SDRAngel here, and you've got all the options here. Again, I'm not too familiar with the multi-in, multi-out. I'd like to check that out, but that's a pretty easy thing. Just Preferences, Devices, set up user arguments, put a string in. That way you got the Pluto SDR there. It comes up as user defined. So again, that's going to allow you a lot of different channels here. You can see all the different plugins and everything that's going to allow you to do with the SDR. I've went over these before. I won't go in detail on them right now. Again, let's see. Let's take a look at let's see, SDR++. It's pretty easy because it allows you to pick the Pluto SDR. You can just straight plug in the IP address, and again, it's kind of capped out at 20. And with that audio demodulation on, it's going to not really keep up. There's going to be a lot of sample loss. But let's see if we take it down. 4, so you'll see. So you can use the ANTSDR and SDR++. Let's see what else. GQRX. We'll open that up. And so what I had to do was other. Put in string like you see here. We just need to change it to 0.118. This will let you go up to 56, so I've got the sample rate at 56. Bandwidth as well. And I have the demodulation off. And so there is the ANTSDR running with GQRX. Probably not going to, obviously get good audio with it cranked up that high, but at least you can see the waterfall in the spectrum there. And let's see. So I messed around with Cubic SDR, couldn't seem to get the settings there. QRadioLink. Actually, I hadn't tried it out on here, but I know under General Settings. So let's put the same setting for RX. We'll save that. Come over here. Let's see, I'll just leave it on FM. We'll do RX. Let's take the. Actually, I got it here in front of me. Let's go ahead and expand on this a little bit. Driver. So let's put that in both. And there we go. So there's QRadioLink. Volume. So there's a QRadioLink. Let's see what else. I think that's probably good for now. There's, I'm sure, more command line tools that can be used. Most of these have SOAPy capability, and so you would just replace ANTSDR with the PlutoSDR. But I think that's enough for now. There's many different things you can do with this ANTSDR. I have it, like I said, booting just the firmware right now, but some of the other things that you can boot on it are essentially full Linux-like operating systems. The one from Analog that I booted the other night was literally like a Raspbian Debian Buster build, and so that's pretty unique, being able to build essentially whatever you want and run right on the ANTSDR with a much bigger storage space than the firmware on board can typically hold. But for right now, I just wanted to stick with the firmware build and run that. I think that's pretty unique, and so look for the firmware in the description, and have fun.